In the last video, I showed you guys how I was able to scale my agency business to $2 million a year and around $1 million a year in recurring profit, specifically using this meta ads strategy. And in today's video, I want to pull back the curtain, show you the exact numbers behind it, how much we were spending on ads, how much an average client paid us, how much it cost us to get a client. And I want to cover some really important key metrics that you need to know if you want to do this strategy for yourself. Now, this is from a request of this gentleman here. So if you want me to cover anything else about scaling a B2B business with ads, you can leave that in the comments below. Without further ado, let's dive in. So this is my ROAS dashboard that you can see here, okay? If you don't know what ROAS is, it's a tracking software that I highly recommend. I'm gonna do videos covering it in the future. But what this shows you is that we spent £178,000 on ads from December of 2024, 17th, to the 17th of November 2025. You can see top level business metrics over here, but then you can see actual meta ad specific metrics here, okay? So we were able to essentially get a £275 cost per call. Now this is not live call, this is just a call. So the actual cost per like live shown Google Meet Zoom video call was a little bit more. But what is really good is our CAC, okay? So overall our CAC from this time period, so basically the year, was £993. That's about 1.3k USD in total. Okay. Now in the last video, I said it was around 2k USD. It's just we had a fantastic period throughout December and January of December 24 to January 2025. And the reason is because I run an agency in the e-commerce niche. Okay. Paid House, if you didn't watch the last video, is the name. And e-commerce has seasonality to it. Okay. So December, January are usually our best months because all the e-com owners have finished up with BFCM, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and they are looking to buy stuff. So, our services, for example. So that's what brought the overall CAC down, but most of the year we were sitting around a 2 to 2.5k USD CAC. And a CAC is essentially how much it's cost, stands for cost of acquiring a customer. So how much did it literally cost me to buy these clients, okay? And you can see, 178,000 divided by 108, that's kind of what gives you the CAC, okay? So that's how you calculate it. Literally just ad spend divided by new customers. Now, also, these new customers paid us an average of around 1.9k GBP, so that's 2.3k USD, something like that. And this is just, by the way, new or first purchase revenue. Okay, so if you times the amount of new customers that we generated with this ad spend here by the average order value, you get this number here. So this is not the total that those 180 new customers paid us. Okay, and we're going to get into what that total looks like and why we actually haven't fully realized that total yet. So I can't necessarily show you the specifics of it. But those are the top level numbers, okay? I'm gonna quickly show you my meta ads dashboard as well to prove that this is true. Okay, so we're in my meta ads dashboard here. I'm just gonna click refresh. It's gonna probably take a little while, but you can see £171,000. So it's about £6,000 or £7,000 off from what ROAS is saying, with 717 website schedules. So again, ROAS said about 648, Meta's saying higher. There's always gonna be a bit of a difference between the two, but that is just to show you. Okay, cool. So how much have I actually made from this ad spend, right? That's probably what you're thinking. Well, the average I've probably made is, it's going to be based on my LTV. So the lifetime value of a customer. You can see I acquired 180 customers, right? And we've got a nice little working out zone here specifically for this purpose. But how much is that actually going to make me? Well, the reason I can't specifically say is because we still are serving a lot of these customers and they're still paying us. The agency business model, as most of you know, you're typically billing on a monthly basis, as opposed to, say, info, let's say, where 99% of the money you're cashing out on the front end, up front. But with the agency, you're delivering a monthly service, you're billing on a monthly basis. And so what I can tell you, though, is that my average invoice, as you can see, this is the average invoice that my agency was able to generate. It's going to sit around 2.5k USD, which, to be fair, is it definitely could be a lot higher. Quite frankly, we have some clients paying us in the 8 to 9 to 10k a month range, but then we actually have a lot of clients on 1,500 retainers because that's just what they were able to afford, right? Now we can get into like what you should charge and things like that. And to be fair, moving forward into 2026, we're going to be trying to kick out a lot of those clients. But just this is where it is right now. You can see we did make some improvements going into September and stuff like that. But yeah, so that means that essentially we have a 2.5k average retainer, and our churn rate, this is our churn rate for the entire year. It sits around a 15% average. Okay. Sometimes it spikes because that's just how it is. Like just because there's a spike doesn't mean like my company sucks. It's just the law of averages. Okay. Rather than it being 15% every single month, it's going to go down to 10% and it's going to spike. And it's just like, that's just how the world works, right? The average is around 15%. Okay. And so what that basically means is that, and the math is slightly different, but it's like if it's a 2.5K average retainer, if the churn is 15%, then the way that you calculate lifetime, like how many months a client would stay, is you basically divide 100% by 15%, which is about 6 months. So it's about 6 month lifetime with us. And that might sound a little bit low, but you've got to remember, like, some clients come through ads, and especially as well in January and February, we were running a 1 month offer. Literally, you paid us, we set up your Google Ads, which is the service that we were running on ads. That was our main service line, which again, I covered fully in the last video. But we would set that up within the period of 1 month. Okay, so it's a very short cycle, and a lot of people came in just for that 1 month setup, and then they left. We ended up pivoting the offer later in the year to be a 3 month offer, and that massively improved our lifetime value. But that is why kind of the average has been down at sort of 6 months, and you can see in March and April we had a big kind of churn period because of that. So it's about 180 customers. 2.5K times 6 is essentially about, I'll just do the maths here, 2.5 times 6 is 15. Okay, so about $15,000. Okay, an average client would pay us. Now, honestly, like, you want to be optimizing for at least $20,000 in lifetime value. That is what we're getting now. I'm just showing you the total number for the year. As I said, I made a lot of mistakes at the start of 2025 with bringing in a lot of customers that just weren't paying us enough money, didn't have enough big enough LTV. Now our LTV sits at 20 to 30K. All right. So very simply, you want to do 180 times 15, which is going to give you 2.7 million. Okay, if you do that calculation, and so it's probably fair to say, again, as I said, these 180 customers are still paying us. We haven't realized all of this revenue yet, but it's fair to say that this is probably what I have made from this ad spend. Okay, so I think, I don't know what 178K GBP is in USD. I think it's probably about, I can just do the mass calculation as well. Yeah, it's literally about 237K USD. So in terms of actual cost to revenue, we've got a 10x ROAS. Okay. Which is pretty cool. Like, we should have over a 10x ROAS, is what I'm trying to say. And so these are the numbers that you really need to track down. I'm going to actually give you a spreadsheet to calculate this in a moment, but you really need to understand your average invoice, your churn rate, the amount you're spending, and that's going to allow you to kind of calculate out all of that. Okay. Another metric that I want to show you is our essential ascendance or upsell rate, right? So 38% of customers, we would actually be able to win on more than one service. So 38% of customers that came in were getting upsold onto an additional service. And that's why we were able to, get this kind of an LTV, right? And again, this is, more sort of later in the year, but that's why we're able to get 20K plus LTVs. And so, yeah, that's basically the numbers. Okay, so let's jump into some other key metrics here that you really want to kind of understand and know about when you're kind of planning to do this for your agency. Again, best way to scale your agency is in this kind of paid ads fashion, because it's very much just $1 in, $3 out, as I'm going to show you. But what's really important to understand is this payback period. And you can kind of see how this works, right? With the explanation that I've just given. It's like when it comes to scaling a B2B business where you're typically charging on a month-to-month basis, you're not going to get that money straight away. There's going to be a bit of a payback period, so to speak, in terms of, you start spending on ads and that money goes essentially straight away. You get basically start in the red, right? So if we look at your cash position, you kind of start down here, and then, a period of time goes by. For us, from day one or day zero spend to actual payback. And of course, on the first sale, we were getting payback because we were, our CAC was, as I showed you, average CAC was about 1.3K USD, and the AOV was average 1.9K GBP, so that's 2.3, whatever. So we were making almost a 2x ROAS on the front end straight away, but there's still sales cycle, right? This is B2B, business to business. And so people don't always just buy straight away, and people need to think about it, and there's a lot of follow-up involved and stuff like that. So I think our average time to close was probably about 14 days. This is something that I actually need to look into a little bit deeper. It's probably around 14 days. I think that's pretty normal. And so what that means is you're basically going to be in the red for 14 days before you come out of the red. And then what's going to happen is you go back into the red again because, well, you keep spending, right? Or maybe you start spending more because you've just closed that sale, and then you kind of come out the red. And then it gets even worse because what happens is once you start to book all these calls, you need to hire a salesperson, you need to build a sales team, right? And of course, this is just a playbook way to scale a B2B business. But what happens then is you need to spend more to fill those salespeople's calendars, okay, so that they can actually make commission and, be of value to your company, and so they can eat as well, because typically you're hiring these reps on a commission-only basis. And so what that means is that you have to spend more, and so you go even deeper into the red, and then you have to pull yourself out. And it's kind of just this cycle that happens. However, over time, you're able to kind of pull on certain levers that ultimately means you're just going to be able to profit a lot over the long term, okay? And again, this is always over the long term. Almost every single ad that you run, if you just run it for long enough, will be profitable. It's crazy. Like, if you just run the ad for long enough, people will obviously book a call and buy straight away, but there will be a lot of people that see the ad and then they book and then they come back, 6 to 12 months later, and then they buy. Like, this is kind of like how B2B sales works. And so what happens is if you just wait for like 6 months and then you look back at the performance of an ad using a tool like ROAS, you will actually see that you've probably turned this ad off by now, but that ad has actually made you like a 2 to 3x profit. And that kind of brings us nicely onto the next term, which I like to use, which is POAS. So a lot of you may be familiar with ROAS, which is return on ad spend, but I only really look at POAS, which is profit on ad spend, okay? And furthermore, this is an LTV number that I showed you earlier because I'm not actually accounting how much it costs for me to deliver the service, okay? And really, revenue in agency businesses is a stupid metric to look at, unless you're trying to sell, but even then you're pretty much always going to get an exit multiple on your profit anyway. So profit is really the only thing you want to look at. Profit is what allows you to hire better people. Profit is what allows you to spend more on ads. Profit is what allows you to what I mean? It's the lifeblood of a cash flow business. And so I'm not really interested in revenue. I'm interested in profit. So how much profit am I getting for my ad spend? Now, luckily for me, I have a very good margin in this business. It's, I think, right around, I know what it is to the specifics, but just like bird's eye view, it's probably got to be around 60-65% after like all expenses, software, MISC, like all the kinds of different investments. In terms of the exact number it takes me to deliver the service, that's around like 20% cost, okay? But after everything, it's probably like 60-65%. And so again, if we just want to do some quick maths here, the profit is still going to be, again, like, ultimately 1.7 million, something like that, which again is a very good POAS on this number. But that's something that I want to really encourage you to look at, okay? It's going to be very easy, very tempting to look at ROAS initially, like, oh yeah, we closed like 3 clients last month, we're crushing it, we've got crazy revenue numbers, but it's like, well, cool, but ads only make sense if they increase the amount of profit you're making. And this is just such a dangerous trap to get into, where you're just looking at revenue and you're not looking at profit, and it's just very dangerous. You need to always be optimizing for profit and POAS, okay? And you should be turning ads off that are not making you profit, and you should be keeping ads on that are making you profit, even if they are not booking as many calls or whatever. Like, that's a BS metric. The only metric that matters is POAS, really. Another metric that's really cool to look at, and this is kind of a new one that I've learned, is revenue per lead. It's a really good way to squeeze the most out of your business. So as you can see, I've generated over 1,400 leads this year in the e-commerce industry, which is an extremely competitive industry to work in. But I wasn't really ever looking at revenue per lead. And the reason why revenue per lead is important is because it forces you to look at, like, okay, cool, how much am I literally getting out of my marketing? Okay. Because you can't really, like, a lead is kind of like the first point where you can really measure your return for your ad spend. Like your CPL is kind of downstream of your cost per call, and then that's downstream of your CAC. But if you look at rev per lead, what that kind of forces you to do is like, okay, cool, how can I improve my pre-call sales process? How can I improve my initial actual sales process? How can I improve it forces you to look at a bit more of a holistic picture than just close rate. So it's a metric that I really like to track these days. And then finally, the king of them all, LTGP to CAC. And what that means is lifetime gross profit to cost of acquiring a customer. And again, just as we were talking about with POAS, this is the most important thing. It's really just looking at, okay, how much profit am I making over time and divide that from my ad spend, that's going to give me, my ratio, and there's certain benchmarks that we want to look at. Okay, and so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you through the sheet that I use to model this out. Okay, cool. So this is the sheet. I will leave a link to this in the description. It's really simple. What you want to do is you want to put in your ad spend for a given period. So let's look at like a month period. Let's say I spend, $6,000 in the month. I'm spending about $200 a day. Okay. Let's say I'm getting a cost per qualified call of about $477, and I'm closing about 36% of those. Those were roughly our metrics at Paid House. As I said, we were able to get a $1,300-ish CAC. And so that's kind of, what our metrics looked like. So out of that $6,000, I'm probably closing, if we round this up, about 5 people. Okay. And so then we have to say, okay, cool. What is the average customer revenue? Well, it's about $2,500 a month for us. Now, technically, it's definitely higher than this if we look at the last 6 months, because we started charging $6,000 up front for 3 months rather than a 1 month offer. So our average customer revenue definitely did go up, to sort of like 3,000. So I'll put that there. And I know that my cost to just deliver that setup offer that we were selling on the front end. And again, I'm going to cover a whole new video on this channel where I go into offers and stuff like that you can run with paid ads. If you want that, comment below. But just on the Google Ads setup offer that we were selling, my cost was pretty much 20%. Now that is not looking at software, admittedly. That's not looking at MISC expenses, operational expenses, salaries. That is just like what the gross profit is to deliver that specific service for that specific customer. We were paying 20% to our account managers. Okay. Our churn, as you saw, is about 15%, which gives us an LTV of 20,000. Now, obviously we saw an LTV of 15,000, earlier, but that's because I had factored in 2,500, not 3,000. Okay. But, as I said, I think our LTV really was around 3,000, especially in the last sort of 6 months. So that's going to give us an LTV of $20,000 right off the rip. Okay. So I'm spending 1,300 to get 20,000 back in revenue. Like that is good economics. Okay. But of course, if my gross profit was 10%, suddenly I'm burning cash, literally burning cash. Okay. You want to really have a CAC to LTGP of around a 6x, in my opinion, minimum. And so obviously this gives us an LTGP of 16. So that's giving us a CAC to LTGP ratio of 12. Now, of course, this is perfect world numbers. In reality, there's, life happens, you give certain customers discounts, certain AMs get paid more. I'm not going to admit that everything was fine and dandy all the time, but this is definitely a good rough estimation. Okay. And so what you can get is this number, which is your profit from your ad spend. And what basically this does is it times your closes by your LTGP. So your average profit per close, over your sort of 6 month time horizon that a client stays with you. And then you basically want to obviously minus your ad spend off of that to get your true profit. Okay. So ultimately you are buying profit. It's just going to take you 6 months to realize that profit because of your churn rate. Okay. So you're spending $6,000 to get $66,000 back in 6 months. Okay, so I'll leave the link to this in the description if you want to play around with this. I think you've got to be really honest with yourself with this sheet. Almost you want to be pessimistic with the sheet, to be honest with you. So long as you're above that 6x number, I know it says minimum, but this is 100% scalable. Okay, I mean, Hormozy says a 3x CAC to LTGP is kind of his bare minimum. I think when you're spending aggressively on ads, that's very thin margin. You want to really be bumping that up to sort of a 5-6 mark. 20 is very unachievable. I mean, that's pretty crazy. But yeah, so long as you're really within these kind of 3 bands, you're pretty good. And, especially if you're in this band here, you can scale very, very aggressively. And you're going to be fine. So yeah, hopefully this helped. Cool, guys. So hopefully this shed a bit of light on what the maths behind scaling to sort of 200K a month with paid ads looks like. If you want to see any more specific content, please comment below. I'm more than happy to film videos explaining exactly how we did that. But again, most important thing for me is just if you can hit that subscribe button and like, it's just going to help you by recommending other useful videos to you. And it's going to help me by getting my content out there to help more agency owners and B2B businesses. All right. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.